Ambassador Vorithax had served the Galactic Concord for 300 years, and in all that time he had never once felt fear during a routine survey mission. His ship, the Quiet Observer, drifted through the outer edges of a spiral arm that most species considered worthless and empty, a backwater region of the galaxy where no intelligent life had ever been found, and where none was ever expected to exist. The ambassador was a Valkyrie, a species known for their calm nature and their exceptional skills in diplomacy and exploration. And he had personally cataloged over 2,000 uninhabited worlds during his long career. On this particular day, if one could call it a day in the endless darkness of space, Vorithax was reviewing scanner data from a small yellow star that his navigation computer had labeled as unremarkable and unworthy of close investigation. He almost moved on to the next system without a second thought. But then his communication officer, a young Valkyrie named Thesix, let out a sound of confusion that made the ambassador turn his attention back to the display screens. "Ambassador, I am detecting something strange from the third planet orbiting this star," Thesix said, her four eyes blinking rapidly as she studied the data streaming across her console. Vorithax moved closer and looked at what she had found, and at first he thought the equipment must be broken because what he was seeing made no sense at all. Radio waves were coming from that distant blue world, but these were not the random emissions that sometimes came from storms or geological activity on lifeless planets. These signals were organized and structured and clearly artificial in nature. "Run a full analysis," the ambassador ordered, his voice steady even as his hearts began to beat faster. The computer worked for several minutes, processing the signals and attempting to find patterns. And when the results appeared on the screen, Vorithax felt his blood turn cold. The signals contained language. Not just noise or random patterns, but actual structured communication created by intelligent beings. "There is life on that planet," Thesix whispered, and for a moment neither of them could speak because the implications were too enormous to process. The Galactic Concord had existed for over 50,000 years and included more than 800 spacefaring species. And in all that time, the discovery of a new intelligent civilization was considered the rarest and most significant event possible. Vorithax immediately ordered a stealth probe to be launched toward the blue planet. And while they waited for it to arrive, he began studying everything the ship's sensors could tell him about this mysterious world. What he learned in those first few hours filled him with growing unease. The planet was covered mostly in liquid water, a substance that was corrosive and dangerous to many species in the galaxy, and its atmosphere contained high levels of oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could cause fires and explosions under the right conditions. The world experienced violent weather patterns and was struck by thousands of electrical storms every single day. Massive geological plates shifted beneath its surface, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that could destroy entire regions without warning. And the radiation from its yellow star bombarded the planet constantly, forcing any life there to develop under conditions that would kill most known species within hours. "This cannot be right," Vorithax muttered to himself as he reviewed the environmental data again and again. No world this hostile had ever produced intelligent life in the recorded history of the galaxy. The Concord had a classification system for planets, and any world with more than 3 major hazards was labeled as a death world and considered completely unsuitable for colonization or even extended visits. This blue planet had 17 major hazards. When the stealth probe finally arrived and began sending back detailed scans and images, Vorithax understood that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. The planet was not just inhabited. It was crowded with life in a way that seemed impossible and almost obscene in its abundance. Creatures filled every environment from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. from the frozen poles to the burning deserts. And they competed and fought and devoured each other in an endless cycle of violence and survival. And at the top of this chaos stood a single species that had somehow conquered all the others. They called themselves humans. The probe scanners counted them, and the number made Vorithax gasp in shock, because there were 8 billion of these creatures living on one small world. 8 billion apex predators sharing a single planet. Among the Concord species, such a population density would have led to war and extinction within a few generations. But these humans had somehow found ways to coexist, even while they remained capable of destroying each other. The ambassador watched footage captured by the probe and saw human cities that stretched across vast landscapes. Towers of metal and glass that reached toward the sky. Vehicles that moved at incredible speeds on the ground and through the air. And networks of communication that connected every corner of their world. They had achieved all of this in what appeared to be an impossibly short time. Their recorded history suggested they had developed from primitive tool users to a global technological civilization in less than 10,000 years. A pace of advancement that was unheard of among Concord species. Vorithax spent 3 days reviewing the probe's data, and with each passing hour his fear grew stronger. These humans were not like any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They were something new and something terrifying. The ambassador called an emergency meeting with his senior staff and shared his findings. And when he was finished speaking, the room was silent because no one knew what to say. "What do we do?" Desix finally asked. Vorithax took a deep breath and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "We must inform the High Council immediately," he said, and his voice carried a weight that his crew had never heard before. "I am recommending a full quarantine of this system until the Concord can determine how to proceed." He looked at the image of Earth still glowing on the display screen, that beautiful and deadly blue marble floating in the darkness of space. "If these humans ever leave their world," the ambassador said quietly, "I do not know if anything in the galaxy will be able to stop them." The message was sent at maximum priority across the Concord communication network, and within hours, every major government in the known galaxy had received the same warning. A new species had been discovered. They lived on a death world, and they were already reaching for the stars. The Galactic Concord responded to Ambassador Vorithax, warning with a speed that had not been seen in over 1,000 years. Within 2 standard weeks, a massive observation station had been constructed in the asteroid belt of the human solar system, hidden from detection by the most advanced cloaking technology the Concord possessed. More than 300 of the galaxy's greatest scientists arrived to study this impossible species, and among them was Dr. Seleth, a Marathi xenobiologist who had spent her entire career trying to understand how life adapted to extreme environments. She thought she had seen everything the universe had to offer. She was very wrong. The research teams worked day and night, analyzing every piece of data the probes could gather about Earth and its dominant species. And what they discovered made even the most experienced scientists question their understanding of biology. Dr. Seleth stood before the assembled researchers and began her first major presentation with a simple statement. "Earth should not have life," she said, her tentacles gesturing toward the holographic display of the blue planet. "Every model we have, every theory of how life develops and survives, tells us that this world is too hostile for complex organisms to exist, and yet it is one of the most life-rich planets we have ever observed." She changed the display to show the planet's environmental conditions. The atmosphere is 21% oxygen, a level so high that wildfires can spread across entire continents in a matter of days. And yet the humans breathe this gas constantly and cannot survive without it. The audience murmured in disbelief. "The surface gravity is strong enough to crush many of our species, and yet humans run and jump and climb as if it means nothing to them. She showed footage of humans engaged in various physical activities, and several scientists made sounds of distress as they watched these creatures push their bodies to limits that seem suicidal. They engage in something called sports, where they deliberately test their physical abilities against each other, often resulting in serious injury, and they do this for entertainment. Dr. Seleth continued her presentation, describing how humans had evolved on a planet where they were not the strongest or fastest or most dangerous creatures. They were prey animals once, she explained, hunted by larger predators with sharper teeth and stronger claws, but they did not accept their place in the food chain. The display showed ancient humans with primitive weapons facing massive predators that should have killed them easily. They developed a hunting technique that no other species in the galaxy has ever used, something they call persistence hunting. The footage changed to show a human chasing an animal across an open landscape. They would select a target and then follow it. Not attacking, just following, for hours and hours without stopping. And the prey animal would run and hide and run again. But the human would always find it and continue the chase. Dr. Seleth paused to let this information sink in. Most species in the galaxy can run faster than humans over short distances. But humans can maintain their pace longer than almost any other creature on their world. And they can do this in heat that would kill most predators, because they have a cooling system built into their skin that releases water to regulate their body temperature. A scientist in the audience raised a limb to ask a question. Are you saying they would simply chase an animal until it died of exhaustion? Yes, Dr. Seleth confirmed, and they still do this today in some parts of their world, running for entire days if necessary until their prey collapses and cannot escape. The room fell silent as everyone processed this horrifying information. But Dr. Seleth was not finished. Their persistence is not limited to hunting, she continued. It appears to be a fundamental part of their psychology that applies to everything they do. She showed examples of human endurance that made the scientists uncomfortable. People running races that lasted for days, climbing mountains in conditions that should have killed them, surviving in deserts and frozen wastelands with minimal resources. When humans decide they want something, they do not stop until they get it or die trying. And sometimes they continue even after they should have died. The presentation shifted to show human medical records and survival stories. Humans have survived injuries that would be instantly fatal to most Concord species. Massive blood loss, organ damage, broken bones, exposure to extreme temperatures, and even having parts of their brains destroyed. She highlighted cases where humans had continued fighting or working after being hurt in ways that should have made movement impossible. Their bodies produce chemical compounds during stress that suppress pain and increase strength, allowing them to perform incredible physical feats when they or others they care about are in danger. Dr. Seleth then addressed what she called the most disturbing aspect of human psychology. They form emotional bonds with almost anything, she said. Not just members of their own species or even their own family groups, but with animals, objects, places, and abstract concepts. The display showed humans with pet animals, humans mourning the loss of vehicles and buildings, humans crying over fictional stories. They will risk their lives to save creatures that are not related to them, including animals that could kill them, and they will sacrifice themselves for ideas like freedom and justice that have no physical form. A Valkyrie diplomat in the audience spoke up with obvious concern in his voice. What happens if you threaten something they have bonded with? Dr. Seleth's expression became very serious. They become extremely dangerous, she answered. More dangerous than any individual should be able to become. And they will continue fighting long past the point where any rational being would surrender or flee. She ended her presentation with a warning that would echo through the halls of the Concord for years to come. These humans are not simply survivors who adapted to a harsh environment, she said. They are the product of a world that tried to kill them every single day for millions of years. And instead of dying, they became the most dangerous species the world had ever seen. The scientists left the presentation in silence, each of them struggling to understand how such a species could exist. And somewhere far below them, on that blue death world, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives with no idea that the entire galaxy was watching them with fear. While the scientists studied human biology and behavior, a separate team of historians and cultural experts began the difficult task of translating and analyzing human records. This team was led by High Counselor Thren, one of the oldest and most respected members of the Galactic Concord, who had personally overseen first contact situations with more than 30 new species during her long career. She had never encountered anything like humanity. The translation work took months because humans had developed thousands of different languages throughout their history, each one reflecting a different culture and way of thinking. This alone was unusual because most intelligent species developed a single, global language relatively early in their advancement, but humans seemed to enjoy their differences and often fought to preserve them. When the translation software finally began producing readable texts, High Counselor Thren and her team started with the oldest records they could find, hoping to understand how this species had developed. What they discovered kept them awake for many nights. Human history was a story of constant conflict and struggle that would have broken any other species the Concord had ever studied. The humans had fought wars against each other since before they had developed writing, killing millions of their own kind over territory, resources, beliefs, and sometimes for reasons that made no sense at all. They have a concept they call honor, one of the translators explained to the council during a briefing, and they will often choose death over living without it, even when survival would be the logical choice. High Counselor Thren reviewed records of human wars that had killed tens of millions of people, conflicts so destructive that entire civilizations had been wiped from existence. And yet the species as a whole had continued as if such losses were simply part of their normal existence. They recovered from a global conflict they call World War II, she reported to the full council, where over 70 million humans died in less than 6 years. And within a single generation, they had rebuilt their societies and were already planning to leave their planet. The council members looked at each other in disbelief. Any other species would have taken centuries to recover from such devastation, if they recovered at all. But the humans had treated it as a temporary setback. The historical team discovered that war was not even the greatest threat humans had faced. Disease had killed far more of them than any conflict, with plagues sweeping across their world again and again throughout their history. One particular illness, called the Black Death, had killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of the entire population of one of their largest continents. And the social and economic effects had lasted for generations. And yet they had survived. They had buried their dead, mourned their losses, and then simply continued living. They have a saying, High Counselor Thren told the council, that what does not kill them makes them stronger. And based on their history, this appears to be literally true for their species. The team also discovered that humans had survived catastrophic natural disasters that should have ended their existence entirely. Massive volcanic eruptions had blocked out the sun and caused global winters that destroyed food supplies. Earthquakes and floods had killed hundreds of thousands at a time. Climate changes had forced entire populations to migrate across continents in search of survival. And approximately 70,000 years ago, the human population had been reduced to perhaps as few as 10,000 individuals by a combination of environmental disasters, bringing them to the very edge of extinction. They call this a population bottleneck, one of the researchers explained. And their genetic records confirm that every human alive today is descended from this tiny group of survivors. The implications of this discovery were staggering. The humans had looked into the face of extinction itself, and they had refused to die. Not only had they survived, but they had spread across their entire planet and eventually dominated every environment it had to offer. High Counselor Thren spent many hours studying human literature and art, trying to understand how their minds worked. And what she found there disturbed her more than anything else. The humans were obsessed with their own destruction. Their stories were filled with disasters and apocalypses, with heroes fighting against impossible odds, with civilizations falling and rising again from the ashes. But these were not tales of despair. They were tales of hope. The humans created these stories to remind themselves that no matter how bad things became, survival was always possible for those who refused to give up. They have another concept, the High Counselor explained in her final report, something they call spite. The Council listened carefully. Spite is the act of continuing to exist purely to deny satisfaction to an enemy or to the universe itself. And humans consider this to be a virtue rather than a flaw. She displayed quotes from human history that demonstrated this philosophy. Soldiers who had kept fighting with fatal wounds because they refused to let their enemies see them fall. Scientists who had worked until their last breath to complete research that might help future generations. Ordinary people who had survived concentration camps and famines and natural disasters, through sheer determination to outlive whatever was trying to kill them. When faced with certain death, High Counselor Thren concluded, humans do not accept their fate quietly, and they do not surrender, and they do not compromise. She paused and looked at each council member in turn. They fight back, even when fighting is illogical, even when victory is impossible, because they would rather die struggling than live having given up. The council chamber was silent for a long time after her report ended. Finally, the eldest member spoke. "What you are describing," he said slowly, "is not merely a survival instinct, but something far more dangerous." High Counselor Thren nodded. "Yes," she agreed. "What I am describing is a species that genuinely believes it cannot be defeated. Not because they are foolish or arrogant, but because their entire history has proven that extinction is simply not something they are willing to accept." The weight of her words hung in the air as every member of the council realized they were facing a decision that would shape the future of the galaxy. What do you do with a species that refuses to die? The great chamber of the Galactic Concord had not seen a full assembly of all member species in over 10,000 years. The last time this had happened was during the Void War, when an aggressive species from the Outer Rim had threatened the stability of the entire galaxy, and the Concord had united to destroy them completely. Now 800 different species had sent their representatives to decide the fate of humanity, and the debate that followed would be remembered for generations to come. Grand Admiral Korath of the Militant Orders spoke first, his massive armored form towering over the other delegates as his voice echoed through the chamber. "We have seen the evidence," he declared, "and there can be only one conclusion. These humans are a threat to every civilization in the galaxy." He activated a display showing human military history, the wars and weapons and destruction that had marked their entire existence. They have already developed nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own planet, and they have used these weapons against each other without hesitation. The display showed images of mushroom clouds and devastated cities. Within a few hundred years, perhaps less, they will develop faster than light travel, and when they do, they will spread across the galaxy like a plague. Many delegates murmured in agreement. "I propose that we act now, while we still can," the Grand Admiral continued. "A single coordinated strike could end this threat before it ever leaves that death world." But not everyone in the chamber shared his view. Ambassador Lorenth of the Healer Collective rose to speak against immediate action. "What the Admiral proposes is genocide," she said quietly. "The complete destruction of an intelligent species that has done nothing to harm us." Grand Admiral Korath made a sound of anger. "They will harm us eventually, That is the nature of such creatures. You do not know that, Ambassador Laurent replied. You are making assumptions based on fear, not evidence. She activated her own display, showing different images of humanity. Yes, humans are capable of great violence, but they are also capable of great compassion. The images showed humans caring for sick animals, building homes for those who had lost everything, rushing into dangerous situations to save strangers. They have organizations dedicated entirely to helping others, with no benefit to themselves, and millions of humans volunteer their time and resources to make their world better for everyone. Grand Admiral Korath dismissed this with a wave of his armored hand. Kindness toward their own kind means nothing. Many predator species care for their pack members while still being dangerous to outsiders. The debate continued for hours, with representatives from dozens of species offering their opinions. Some agreed with the Grand Admiral that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to survive. Others argued for a quarantine surrounding the human solar system, with a barrier that would prevent them from ever leaving, but would not require their destruction. Still others suggested trying to slow human technological development through subtle interference, keeping them trapped on their planet for as long as possible. But it was Ambassador Vor-Ithax, the one who had first discovered the human signal, who finally changed the direction of the debate. The old Valkyrie walked slowly to the center of the chamber and waited until every eye was upon him. I have spent the last 2 years watching these humans, he said, studying everything about them, trying to understand what kind of species they truly are. He paused and looked around at the assembled delegates. And I believe we have been asking the wrong question. The chamber fell silent. We have focused on whether humans are dangerous, and the answer is obviously yes. They are among the most dangerous beings the galaxy has ever seen. Grand Admiral Korath nodded in satisfaction. But that is not the question that matters, Vor-Ithax continued. The question that matters is whether humans can be reasoned with, whether they can be befriended, whether they can become part of our galactic community. He activated a new display showing human diplomatic history. Humans have a remarkable capacity for making peace with former enemies, and some of their strongest alliances today are with nations they were trying to destroy just a few generations ago. The display showed examples of former enemies becoming close partners, countries that had fought brutal wars, now trading and cooperating as if the conflicts had never happened. They have a concept they call forgiveness, the ability to let go of past wrongs and build new relationships. And they practice this not only between individuals, but between entire nations. Ambassador Vor-Ithax looked directly at Grand Admiral Korath. If we approach them with weapons, they will fight us with everything they have. And based on what we know of their nature, they will never stop fighting until either they are completely destroyed or we are. The Grand Admiral began to respond, but Vor-Ithax continued speaking. But if we approach them with respect, with honesty, with an offer of friendship, they may surprise us. He showed more images. Humans welcoming strangers into their homes. Humans learning about other cultures. Humans forming bonds with creatures completely different from themselves. They are not simply destroyers, he said. They are also builders and creators and dreamers. And they have spent their entire existence reaching toward things they did not yet understand. His voice grew stronger. They looked at their moon and decided they wanted to walk on it, even though they had no idea how to get there. And within a single generation, they had accomplished what should have been impossible. He turned to address the entire assembly. Imagine what they could accomplish if they had access to our knowledge and technology. Imagine what problems they could solve, what discoveries they could make, what wonders they could create. The chamber was completely silent. I believe the choice before us is not simply whether to destroy them or contain them. Ambassador Vor-Ithax concluded. It is whether we want to face them as enemies or welcome them as allies. He let his words hang in the air. And I know which option I would prefer. The debate continued for 3 more days, but the tone had changed. Instead of discussing how to eliminate the human threat, the delegates began discussing how to make contact, how to present themselves in a way that would not trigger human aggression, how to build trust with a species that had every reason to be suspicious of strangers. In the end, the vote was closer than many had expected, but the decision was made. The Galactic Concord would reach out to humanity, not as conquerors or judges, but as potential friends. It was the most dangerous gamble in the history of the galaxy, but it was also perhaps the most hopeful. Captain Elena Vasquez had spent her entire life dreaming of the stars. As a child growing up in a small village in Mexico, she had looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets were hiding in that endless darkness, and she had promised herself that one day she would find out. Now, at 53 years old, she commanded the deep space exploration vessel Endeavour, one of humanity's first ships capable of traveling beyond the solar system. And she was about to discover that the universe was far stranger than anyone had imagined. The Endeavour had been drifting near the edge of the solar system for 3 weeks, running long-range sensor sweeps and collecting data on the interstellar medium, when something appeared on the screens that made the entire crew stop breathing. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chun from the sensor station, his voice shaking slightly, "there is something out there." Elena moved to stand behind him and looked at the display, and what she saw made her heart beat faster. A ship was decloaking less than 10,000 kilometers away, and it was like nothing humanity had ever built. The vessel was enormous, at least 5 times the size of the Endeavour, with a design that seemed to flow and curve in ways that human engineering could not achieve. "We are being scanned," Chun reported. "I have never seen technology like this." Elena took a deep breath and forced herself to remain calm. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, but before they could finish, a message appeared on their screens in perfect English. "Human vessel, we mean you no harm. Please respond if you understand this message." Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as the reality of what was happening finally hit her. They were not alone. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Endeavour," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions flooding through her. "We receive your message, and we mean you no harm either." There was a pause that seemed to last forever, and then the alien ship responded. "Captain Vasquez, we are representatives of the Galactic Concord, an alliance of over 800 spacefaring species, and we have been watching your world for some time." The bridge crew looked at each other in amazement. 800 species. The galaxy was not just inhabited, it was filled with life. "We have learned much about your people," the message continued, "and we must admit that your species has caused considerable debate among our members." Elena did not know how to respond to that. "What kind of debate?" she asked. There was another pause before the answer came. "Your planet is what we call a death world, a place so hostile that intelligent life should never have developed there, and yet your species not only survived but thrived." The alien voice seemed to carry a note of something Elena could not quite identify. "You have suffered disasters that should have destroyed you, and you simply continued. You have fought wars among yourselves that killed millions, and you rebuilt what you had lost. You faced extinction itself, and you refused to die." Elena thought about human history, about all the struggles and tragedies and triumphs that had brought her species to this moment. "We did what we had to do to survive," she said simply. "Yes," the alien replied, "and that is precisely what concerns many members of the Concord. Because a species that refuses to accept defeat is also a species that could become the most dangerous force the galaxy has ever seen." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Were these aliens here to destroy humanity before they could become a threat? She straightened her shoulders and prepared to face whatever was coming. "If you are here to threaten us," she said, "I should warn you that humanity does not respond well to threats." There was a sound from the communication system that might have been laughter. "We know," the alien voice replied. "We have studied your history very carefully, and we understand that trying to intimidate your species would be extremely foolish." The message continued with what sounded like genuine warmth. "No, Captain Vasquez, we are not here to threaten you. We are here because after much debate, the Concord decided that it would be far better to have humanity as allies than as enemies." Elena blinked in surprise. "You want to be our allies?" "We want to offer you that possibility," the alien confirmed. "We have seen what your species can do when it fights against something, and we are very curious to see what you might accomplish when you have others fighting alongside you." The alien ship transmitted a data package containing information about the Galactic Concord, its history, its members, its laws, and its achievements. As Elena reviewed the information, she began to understand just how significant this moment was. The Concord had existed for 50,000 years and had brought peace and cooperation to hundreds of species across the galaxy, and now they were inviting humanity to join them. "There will be many who fear you," the alien voice said, "and many who will doubt whether your species can learn to live peacefully among others. But there are also those of us who believe that your greatest qualities are not your capacity for destruction, but your capacity for hope and determination and love." Elena thought of everyone she had ever known. Her parents, who had worked hard to give her opportunities they never had. Her teachers who had believed in her dreams. Her crew who trusted her with their lives. She thought about all the humans throughout history who had sacrificed themselves for others, who had built and created and healed, who had looked at impossible challenges and refused to give up. "We are not perfect," she said finally. "We have done terrible things to each other and to our world, and we will probably make many mistakes as we join the galactic community." She paused and looked at the alien ship on her view screen. "But we have also done wonderful things, and we have never stopped trying to become better than we were. And if you are willing to give us a chance, I believe we will prove that humanity deserves to stand among the stars." There was a long silence, and then the alien spoke one final time. "Captain Vasquez, your words give us hope that we have made the right decision. The Galactic Concord welcomes humanity with open arms and with the sincere wish that our species will become the greatest of friends." Elena smiled and felt tears running down her cheeks. Behind her, she could hear her crew cheering and crying and hugging each other. Humanity had spent its entire existence looking up at the stars and wondering what was out there. Now they finally had their answer. The universe was vast and filled with wonders beyond imagination, and humanity was no longer alone. The stars were waiting, and humanity was ready.